Jesus says, "Lo, I stand at the door and knock." Jesus is knocking on the door of your heart today.
To change your heart, as I have shown in the former discourse and repeated in this, is to change the governing preference of your mind. What is needed is that your will should be rightly influenced, that you should reject sin and prefer God and obedience to everything else. The question is then, how is your will to be thus influenced? By what process is it reasonable to expect thus to influence your mind? Until your will is right, it is vain to expect felt emotions of true love to God, of repentance and faith. These feelings, after which perhaps you are seeking and into which you are trying to force yourself, need not be expected until the will is bowed, until the ruling preference of the mind is changed. And here you ought to understand that there are three classes of motives that decide the will. First, those that are purely selfish. Selfishness is the preference of one's own interest and happiness to God and His glory. Whenever the will chooses, directly or indirectly, under the influence of selfishness, the choice is sinful, for all selfishness is sin. A second class of motives that influence the will are those that arise from self-love. Self-love is a constitutional dread of misery and love of happiness. And whenever the will is influenced purely by considerations of this kind, its decisions either have no moral character at all or they are sinful. The constitutional desire of happiness and dread of misery is not in itself sinful, and the consent of the will to lawfully gratify this constitutional love of happiness and dread of misery is not sinful. But when the will consents, as in the case of Adam and Eve, to a prohibited indulgence, it then becomes sinful. A third class of motives that influence the will are connected with conscience. Conscience is the judgment which the mind forms of the moral qualities of actions. When the will is decided by the voice of conscience or a regard to right, its decisions are virtuous. When the mind chooses at the bidding of principle, then and only then are its decisions according to the law of God. While in despair, the sinner should flee rather than submit. But the offer of reconciliation annihilates the influence of despair and gives to conscience its utmost power. Instead, therefore, of waiting for certain feelings or making your present state of mind the subject of attention, please to abstract your thoughts from your present emotions and give your undivided attention to some of the reasons for changing your heart.